my concern in the writing of this book was not so much what is in Trump's head and his intent as to what the effect of it could be. And here I found myself delving into memories. And one of the memories concerned someone that Tom Fenton will know very well, and that was Ed Murrow, who in 1957, I must say I still treasure this thought, was the guy who hired me at CBS. And I had the opportunity from 57 to 60, when the tail end of 60, when Murrow left, to have quite a few conversations with this man, and he was very much my idol. I thought the world of him and still do. One of the things that Murrow told me was of a conversation that he had with an Oxford Don who asked Murrow for a definition of freedom. And Murrow said, democracy. And the Don said, no, that's not good enough. Spell that out for me. And what Murrow said was that in his mind, democracy, this word, stands on two essential pillars. One pillar he described as the sanctity of the court, by which he meant no one stands above the law. And on the other side was the freedom of the press. And Murrow's idea was that if you had those two standing or holding up the foundation of democracy, your society was in good shape. You're going to manage and maintain that democracy if the word itself continued to have meaning. And this gets tricky. Democracy is a word. It has meaning because we vest in that word certain value systems. If we don't put what we feel democracy is into the word itself, it's a word which you can throw out. It could be like a leaf in the wind. It's there but gone. But it is firm if you truly believe that democracy represents certain value systems, such as the sanctity of the court and the freedom of the press. That idea stuck in my mind, and I was privileged to read a speech that Justice Douglas, late Justice Douglas, delivered in 1976. He did it to a state Washington Bar Association meeting in Washington, and the tail end of that speech really grabbed me, and I began to think about it years ago, and it's very much stuck in my mind, because he raises a question. In 1976, Justice Douglas was concerned about the stability of American democracy. Why? Because we had just emerged out of the terrible experience of the Vietnam War on the military side and the Watergate scandal on the political side. And it had shaken the system, there's no doubt of that. And on April 31 of 1975, when the North Vietnamese came in and took over Vietnam, took over South Vietnam, it shook the political, cultural establishment in the United States, and people were looking for enemies of the people, and the right wing fastened onto the press as having covered the war in the wrong way. And that meant that there was something profoundly wrong with one of the pillars of American democracy. And Douglas wrote that when political systems shift from, let us say, democracy to authoritarianism, or even further, autocracy, it doesn't happen one morning at 8:38, and we hereby pronounce that this democracy is now an authoritarian government. He said it happens in phases. And there's a wonderful book written by two young Harvard scholars that came out a couple of months ago, in which they describe themselves that governments today that are moving away from the democracy that we have all known through most of our lives, into something like authoritarianism, are doing it as a result of elected officials moving then toward authoritarianism. Not somebody like Hitler who emerges or a general who emerges, no. A politician duly elected, then using the existing levers of government to shift the meaning of that word, democracy, in another direction. And Douglas spoke about, he spoke of 3 phases. In that first phase, he said, and I'm giving it a little poetry here, that you will get up in the morning and you look around your bedroom and everything looks the same, and you go to work and the buses are running and your boss is still there, as nasty as ever, and everything is normal. You go home, whatever, fine. And you move into the second of 3 phases. Everything continues to look the same. The bus driver is still there, and the job is still there, and the boss is still nuisance. But you know in the pit of your stomach that something has gone wrong. There's something going on here that isn't right. You think you know it, you're not sure you know it, but in the pit of your stomach, something has happened. And then you get into the third phase. This is all Douglas, not Marvin. And in the third phase, it breaks into 2 parts. One part is you get up in the morning and the sun is still shining and you feel pretty good about yourself, and then you say, what was wrong with me yesterday? I thought something was wrong. Nothing is wrong. Everything is fine. You're a fool. Get about your job and let's get going. That's the good side. The second phase of that could be that you get up in that third phase and it's dark outside. And suddenly you realize that what was in the pit of your stomach is now an established fact. And there are things that you thought you could do that you no longer can do. You thought you had this kind of assurance based on your understanding of democracy, but you no longer have that assurance. And what has changed? And you're not sure, but things have definitely changed. And then he raises a very interesting question. What becomes your individual responsibility as a citizen of this country? If you know in the pit of your stomach that something is wrong and you do nothing about it, then when you're in the third phase in darkness, don't complain then. You become what Douglas described as the unwitting victim of the darkness. And then when you think back to the second phase and you say, could I have done something? Probably yes, but why didn't I? I don't know, just didn't. And that is the issue that he raises, and I find it very relevant to what's happening today. In my opinion, totally dismissible, believe me. My wife does that quite regularly. But it's something that I feel very seriously. I think that President Trump, not wittingly, unwittingly, is moving this nation away from our common understanding of democracy towards something that edges toward authoritarianism.